Hello everyone and welcome to Italian Sparkling Wine, Prosecco and Beyond, part of the WSET webinar series. My name is Verity Martin. I am the Business Development Advisor for Southern Europe, work in the EMEA team here at WSET. I'm really pleased to be introducing today's session. If you're new to WSET, we are the world's largest provider of wine, spirits and sake qualifications. We currently operate in over 70 countries. Through our network of approved program providers, which we call APPs. We have well over 800 of them now, so you have lots of options to study with. We also offer regular webinars on a range of drinks-related topics. All of these are recorded, including this one, and they're uploaded to the WSET YouTube page. So make sure you head over there and subscribe. Or if you're watching the recording now, give us a like below. It helps us boost the channel. If you are joining us live, please feel free to submit questions throughout using the Q&A function. We're going to have about 10 to 15 minutes at the end to answer those. I believe that is all of the housekeeping you need to know. So I'd now like to introduce our host for today's session, Flavio Grassi. He is the educator and director at AccademiaVino, one of our leading course providers in Italy. AccademiaVino won our Educator of the Year award in 2019 for their innovation and the amazing growth that they have seen since launching in 2013, I believe. So I will now hand you over to Flavio. I hope you enjoyed the session and I'll see you at the end.
Okay, hello everybody and welcome. It's great to see so many people joining. Thank you for being with us this evening, and thank you, Verity, for that introduction. So without further ado, let me start by telling you what we have. We have quite a bit on our plate today, or I should say in our glass. We will be digging into the intricacies of the Prosecco system, the Prosecco universe, and I'll be tasting a lovely Cartizze, which I hope some of you may have had the opportunity to get. But before I go on, we have a little poll that I would like to start. There you are. I'd like to know if you have a WSET qualification and what kind of qualification. So just I'll continue introducing the session while you let us know what your WSET knowledge is. After the Prosecco, we will be going into the one of the real specialties of Italy, which is the Lambrusco, the bright red sparkling Lambrusco wines. And again, I'll be tasting, hopefully along with at least some of you, a great Lambrusco before heading into the traditional method, Franciacorta, and tasting one of the most, in my personal opinion, interesting styles of Franciacorta, which is the Franciacorta Satin, and I will tell you what it is. And then to finish off, I will give you a little indication about what, there's a lot of sparkling wines, the diversity of Italian wine in general, as those of you who've done level 3 and diploma, we have some diploma people in the audience, which I'm very pleased with, and a lot of level 2 quite a few level 1. So okay, and just to finish off, what I consider some interesting recent trend, particularly one important recent trend. So digging right into the Prosecco now, Prosecco is really a remarkable success story for Italian wine. Just think that about 10 years ago, you could read the name Prosecco on about 70 million bottles in any given year, which was, you know, quite a good size already. But now we're pushing on to 700 million bottles. So a tenfold increase. And, you know, we have a few figures on the slide there. In 2020, which was not a very good year for obvious reasons, it was a dip over the previous year. Still, the whole Prosecco system sold something like 535 million bottles across the different DOCs and DOCGs, which we will be explaining what they are in a minute. So 417 million Prosecco DOC, 90 million Prosecco DOCG, 18 million for the smaller Asolo Prosecco DOCG. But the first data for 2021 show something like 620 million only for the Prosecco DOC. So from 417 to 620, that's a pretty remarkable jump in 1 year. And so it shows the world's thirst for Prosecco seems to be very far from having been quenched yet. So how's this wine made? Of course, in the vineyard, the grape variety, which is called Glera. Now, Glera is an interesting grape. It's quite late ripening, lightly aromatic, and has a couple of things that make it ideal as a grape for sparkling wines. As for sparkling wines, the ideal, as many of you know, is having grapes that don't have so much sugar to avoid excessive alcohol, which will again increase during the second fermentation. And Glera is, answers that need sometimes to a fault. It's really difficult to get Glera to accumulate a lot of sugar, which is the reason why Prosecco typically doesn't have a very high alcohol, 11.5% when it's finished after the second fermentation. And the other interesting characteristics, sparkling wines need to be refreshing. And again, Glera gives a lot of that because it has a quite high content of malic acid. Malic acid is the acid that gives the freshness, the sharpness, and it sustains that malic acid during the ripening, and so that gives the bright freshness. So Prosecco DOC is the largest DOC in Italy. It includes all of Friuli, Venezia Giulia, and most of Veneto, with about 33,000 hectares under vine, and Corneliano Valdobiadine, the DOCG, the main DOCG, with 9,000 hectares. The smaller but high quality Asolo Prosecco DOCG, 1,500 hectares. And in this, the new kid in town in the Prosecco world, which seems to be having quite a lot of success, because in the first vintage, it was introduced 2020, it sold a reasonably good 16 million bottles, which have zoomed up to 71 million bottles in 2021. So again, a new and certainly important member of the Prosecco family. Prosecco Rose is made mostly, again, of course, with Galera, complemented by Pinot Noir, 10 to 15% Pinot Noir. And if you try Prosecco Rose, it has, of course, from the Pinot Noir, that bit more body and red fruit flavor, which complements the typical white, green fruit and citrus flavors of the white Prosecco. So the Prosecco system is quite complex. I mean, people often don't give a second thought to Prosecco because, you know, Prosecco is Prosecco, and the popularity of it has made it almost, and this is a bit terrible, but that's the way it is, a synonym for sparkling wine. You know, even in Italy, people ask for a Prosecco, and sometimes they get any old sparkler, which is a pity. But it's what you get when you are so enormously popular. And there is a whole hierarchy. So at the base of the pyramid, in the Prosecco hierarchy, the DOC Prosecco, which we mentioned, the 33,000 hectares under vine. Inside that, there are two additional mentions for wines made in the province of Treviso, which is where Prosecco gained in its recent most popularity, and again the additional mention of Trieste. Trieste is in Friuli Venezia Giulia, and that deserves a special mention because it is right outside of Trieste that the village of Prosecco, under which the DOC is named, is located. And going further up, we have the two DOCGs, Asolo Prosecco, which is, like I said, quite small, so you would be certainly forgiven if you've never heard of it, but it tends to be quite high quality and worth looking out for. And then the most traditional, the Corneliano Valdobiadine DOCG, and inside which there are the named vineyards, Rivetta, the Premier Cru, if you like. Rivetta are steep slopes, steep named vineyards, and there are 43 of these in the Corneliano Valdobiadine area, and the top, the Grand Cru, Cartizze, which is a single, very steep slope in Valdobbiadene with a unique vineyard climate. And to talk about Cartizze, we have two exceptional guests here from Villa Sandi, the chief winemaker Stefano Gava and the export director Flavio Geretto, my namesake Flavio Geretto, who I thank very much because they took time during their busy Vinitaly schedule recently to record this video for us, which we can start now. Jenny?
Hello everybody, today we are proud to speak about our Cartizze Laryvecta. It is our flagship wine. It is the most awarded wine of Villa Sandi. We can say that we are very proud of this wine because it is the symbol of the quality of the Prosecco region all over the world. It is the only wine with the Tre Bicchieri for 10 years in the area of Prosecco. So, which was the first harvest for this wine, Stefano?
Well, Flavio, this wine is like my baby.
Yes.
Okay. And the first vintage of Cartizze Vineyard Rivetta was 2007. Because the Moretti Borregato family bought the estate in Cartizze that represent now one of the most expensive vineyard in Italy. Okay.
In Europe,
also in Europe, when you speak about the big value in vineyard, you speak about Champagne, Barolo, Brunello, and also Cartizze, because Cartizze represent a very, very unique area. And from our estate that we call Laryvecta, okay, because it's a light slope, we produce this kind of wine that represent our masterpiece wine in a sparkling wine production. Very, very, very important for us.
Yes, and also, first of all, it is the only wine of Villa Sandi in which you don't have only the name Villa Sandi, but you have also the name of the wine estate where it is produced. Wine estate of only 1 hectare, 0.5.
Yes, Flavio, this one is the only wine, the only sparkling wine that we have that is a single vineyard production.
In fact, you can see the map in the label in which we have the perfect area where we produce this wine. The grapes are inside this.
More or less, Flavio, in the vineyard of Laryvecta, every vines have a name, okay? Because it's a mix. At the end, no, it's true, because it's a mix between very old vines that create best grape, best Glera grape for the production of this kind of sparkling that represent, I repeat, our masterpiece in our wine production.
Yes, and if you see the label, the characteristic is that a word is missing, Prosecco. If you have a Cartizze, if a Prosecco is produced in the Cartizze Hill, you don't have the name Prosecco, but you have just Cartizze. That for an Italian, for Italian people, everybody knows that it is something special. But for the foreign market, sometimes it was an issue. But now people is looking for something special also in the Cartizze, in the Cartizze production. Cartizze Hill is only 106 hectares, and the total production area of Prosecco is 33,000. So we can imagine from this how special is this area. But what makes Laryvecta special inside Cartizze?
Rivetta is special because it's in a beautiful point of the Cartizze production, in Cartizze area in particular. We are in the middle between the high slope and the medium slope, and this is the perfect point for the maturation of the grape. And also we are in a point where the cool wind from the mountain, okay, maintain the right temperature in August and September. That is the month, the 15 days, 20 days that is fundamental for the quality of the grapes.
Okay, and that's why the taste is very, very full-bodied, very aromatic.
Because also the combination of the soil is particularly. You can find a different kind of soil in the Prosecco area, but in Cartizze you have the main characteristic. You have a good concentration of clay and sand. It's a very old soil, okay, it's a very old soil, and maintain the grape in a very good health condition during the harvest, okay. And the combination between soil, temperature and land is the best expression, is the best place for making the high quality wine like Rivetta.
And also when we started to produce this wine, it was not in Villa Sandi at that moment, but our winemakers decided to make a bet. Let's to produce a Cartizze Brut, because you know that the tradition in Cartizze is to have a dry with a high quantity of sugar to pair with panettone for Christmas.
Yeah.
But we decided for the aroma of the wine to produce a Brut for the first time. And it was the secret of the success of this wine. That's right?
Absolutely. It's a secret of the Cartizze, Laryvecta in particular, because as you told before, and that's true, the traditional winemaking in Cartizze to make a wine in a dry version. Dry in Italian means that you can use important quantity of sugar, and this one is a Brut. We work at around 9-10 maximum gram per liter of sugar. This is why we create this kind of Cartizze to create the best combination of aromas inside the wine, like inside this glass. You can see the beautiful perlage, the beautiful chain of the bubbles. Nose is an explosion. Is an explosion of aromas typical of Cartizze, typical of this kind of wine.
Yes.
In the mouth, I repeat, we have the best combination between sugar and acid characteristic. Okay. Flavio, there is a motto in Italy: life is too short for drinking bad wine.
This is the right occasion to
drink Cartizze.
This one.
Okay. All right. So a lot of expectations there, and I'm lucky enough here to have my glass that I poured during the video of my Cartizze Laryvecta myself. But before I go into tasting, I'd like to launch the second poll. If I'd like to know how many of you have, if not this, a similar Cartizze to taste. Let me see what is the results here that people, okay. So, well, not very many, but a few, which out of the large audience we have is enough. So, as I say, the description by Stefano and Flavio there raises a lot of expectations. Let's see how this glass I have here, which is the Laryvecta 2021, by the way. So just the latest vintage, and it is showing in the glass a very nice crown of compact, fine bubbles. And I have to say that at first smell, okay, through the WSET, SAT, I'm supposed to say very seriously and very dryly, it is a pronounced intensity. But what I really want to say is that aromas here are really jumping out of this glass, and it's very nice floral with orange blossom, jasmine, and then very perfumed citrus. I'm getting tangerine, bergamot, lemon zest, the white peach, and I could go on and on. Let's see on the, so it's very youthful, bright, aroma. Let's see on the palate. I can really taste that malic acid, the crisp high acidity in quantitative terms, and nice body, and again the very creamy texture, but especially these dry, it's a dry wine, which is unusual, like Stefano said in the video. It's unusual. Villa Sandi was actually the first one to launch a Brut Cartizze. Cartizze is typically in the dry version, so with considerable residual sugar. This is quite nice dry with a very long finish. Really outstanding wine. Great wine for pairing with sushi or tempura, with Japanese food, but also shrimp, delicate fish like sole, sea bass, things like that. So yeah, it does live up to the expectations. I'm really glad I got a chance to retaste this lovely wine. So right before we move on, after this very nice tasting, we move on to the next chapter with Lambrusco. There are a couple of interesting questions on the Q&A that I'd like to answer right now. So good question there from Kevin. Will the vineyard areas keep expanding if the demand of Prosecco increases? Short answer, probably yes. There are already some vineyard areas earmarked to be included in the DOC and subject to market demand. So the people in Prosecco are keeping an eye on what's going on quite closely, and of course suitable vineyard areas. It's a very big region, and I'm sure they will not let people go thirsty for Prosecco. And I might answer the recommendations later. And big one there from Julie. Do you believe the popularity of Prosecco by the masses has diminished the recognition of the quality of the wine? I could go on talking about this for hours. The unfortunate answer is probably yes. It is, but that's very often a lot of snobbery, because Prosecco's, okay, there's a lot of just acceptable, all right Prosecco out there, but Prosecco can be truly outstanding wines, and there are some people in the wine world who think it's, in order to be recognized as an expert, you need to put down what the masses like. My idea on that is that if millions upon millions of people like something, well, you have to respect them. Even the simple, basic Prosecco must have something that appeals to people. And then they're from Bruno, are all the Proseccos vintage? No, there is a Prosecco vintage, and Prosecco can be non-vintage as well. The biggest challenges for Prosecco in relation to climate change. I think Prosecco producers are lucky in the fact that they have this grape, Glera, which, as I mentioned earlier, does not accumulate very high levels of alcohol. And so even if temperatures are a bit warmer, they can still continue. And the alcohol in the wine I tasted, 11.5 from Varum. And then there's a question there from Flavia about Lambrosco, but we will be getting into Lambrosco right now. Okay. And let me go there. Sorry. Need to get there. Okay. All right. The bright red world of Lambrusco, and we are, which by itself is another 200 million bottles. The vast majority of which is what in Italian we call frizzante, so lightly sparkling. Which means, by the way, it does not get included in the statistics for sparkling wine production and sales, because it is the frizzante wines are lumped in with the still wines, though that's a bit, doesn't make a lot of sense. But so it's again quite a complex system, with over 12 DOPs, a very large IGP, so the IGP, Indicazione Geografica Protetta, which is the Italian PGI, Protected Geographical Indication. And what's a Ferrari doing there on that picture? Of course, because we are in Ferrari land, Emilia Romagna, especially Modena. Modena, the outskirts of Modena is where Ferrari is. So red, Ferrari red and Lambrusco red go hand in hand. And I might add that, as you can see from the map, Bologna, which is the home of Ducati motorcycles, is not very far either. So we're talking here of a very different scenery from the Prosecco, and especially the Corneliano Valdobiadene, the hills of Corneliano. We're talking mostly of flat, fertile soils in 3 provinces in Emilia-Romagna, and with very good soil, but with some challenges, because summers tend to be very hot and dry, and that can lead to stress for the grapes, and winters can be pretty cold, foggy. So that's why people in Emilia possibly devote so much of their time and creativity to food and drink. And now we talk about Lambrusco, but we should really be talking about Lambruscos, because it's not a single variety. Lambrusco is a whole family of varieties comprising at least 12 distinct varieties, of which the ones I mentioned here on the slide are the main ones. And sometimes people ask, what's the style of Lambrusco? Well, you would really want to say what's the style of which Lambrusco, because one of the most widely seen Lambrusco di Sorbara is probably what a lot of people have in mind when they think of Lambrusco. It tends to be quite light-bodied, fresh, very floral with these violet and rose aromas, not a lot of color, and has a very interesting, which is a bit of a challenge for growers in the vineyard. It is not a self-pollinating variety. As all of you who've studied WSET, and probably many of you with an interest in wine anyway know, the domesticated vines that we have in vineyards are self-pollinating in general. So that means the flowers have both male and female parts, and they don't need anything else for the pollination and for the fruit set. Well, Lambrusco di Sorbara does have hermaphrodite flowers like every other variety, but functionally it is only female. So that means it doesn't produce the pollen to pollinate itself. So it can never be planted by itself. It always needs to be planted in the vineyard with plants from other Lambrusco varieties, which will supply the pollen for the pollination. And this also leads to the fact that it can be quite a tricky variety, because when you're depending on external pollination, well, you never know how it's going to go. So yields can vary by quite a lot from year to year, depending on the weather conditions at pollination time. Lambrusco Grasparossa, many people consider this the highest quality, although it depends what you define quality. This one has deep color. It's the fullest bodied of the Lambruscos. And again, and Grasparossa is called this way because of the red stalks that you probably can see in the picture. Graspa are the stalks. And again, very high quality Lambrusco Salamino, so called because you see it's the one in the lower left-hand side. The cylinder shape of the bunches resembles, well, salami. What else? Being in Emilia, the land of salami. And this can give quite elegant wines with some body and elegance as well. And it is the grape for the wine I will be tasting in a minute. And then other important Marani, Maestri, and so on, many other wines. And of course, very often you don't know exactly what type of Lambrusco you are drinking, because many Lambruscos are made by blending different varieties, but some of the best ones will be single Lambrusco variety. The vast majority of Lambrusco is frizzante, as I mentioned, and by far the most common way of making it frizzante is the tank method, the Charmat method, although there is a small but growing trend to make a traditional method fully sparkling, spumante, Lambruscos, and growing, or I should say returning, because that was the way it used to be made in the past, Petnat, the Ancestral Method, Metodo Ancestrale, and wines very often with some sweetness, but also dry wines. And so I have here a Lambrusco, which is IGT. It is from this year an organic wine, and it is, just look at it. And very good. I forgot to mention it, but Jenny is always on the ball with the polls. And so let's see how many of you have a dry red Lambrusco to taste there. And okay, we have a good proportion of people have hopefully a nice Lambrusco. And again, we have this very nice crown of purple slight foam here. And on the nose, again, hope yours is as good as mine, because I have a lot, very intense aromas of violet, rose, again, very floral, some geranium, then red fruit, some cinnamon, and so nice, lovely, inviting, youthful wine. And this is dry, or maybe just a little on the way to off dry, with nice bright acidity, not particularly high, but nice, crisp, fresh, some tannin, medium tannin, and again, medium on the lower part, on the lower side of medium, alcohol 11.5%. Medium bodied, very nice, delicate mousse, and again, these bright red and a little spicy, little bit of white pepper on the palate, with a very long finish. So again, great wine, and this really just calls for pairings like salami and the Bolognese cuisine, you know, tagliatelle with ragu, lasagna, but, you know, also things like roast ham, hamburger, chili con carne, anything you want to pair with it is bound to be quite a successful pairing. And so let me quickly answer some of the questions that I see. Is it, Flavia, is it very rare to see still Lambrusco? Yes, it is very rare. As I said, the vast majority of Lambrusco is lightly sparkling. There can be some white Lambrusco, though again it's very rare. The most widely planted, the most widely used Lambrusco varieties, like I mentioned a moment ago, Lambrusco Di Sorbara and Lambrusco Salamino are the most widely planted. Grasparossa also follows. And then, oh yes, Petnat. Petnat is the quite popular around the world these days, is what is also called ancestral method. That is one single fermentation in the bottle. So it's what happened in the past when fermentation stopped because it was cold in the winter, and people bottled the wine that still had sugar and still had the yeast. And then in the spring, when temperatures rose again, it started fermenting again. So the second fermentation is in bottle, like the traditional method, but it's not a second fermentation, it's the continuation of the first fermentation, and it is not disgorged. So Petnat or sui lieviti, there is also Prosecco, which is called sui lieviti or col fondo, are cloudy because they have the yeasty deposit, but they can be extremely interesting to taste. The service temperature, yes, for Prosecco, lightly chilled. No, sorry, for Prosecco should be chilled like 7, 8 degrees Celsius. For Lambrusco, lightly chill, lightly chilled with like 12, 13%. Mostly malolactic fermentation in Lambrusco may or may not happen because that bright freshness is required very often. So the last chapter for today, hoping not to be too like Franciacorta. Of course, people, especially in Italy, always wonder about the sound of Franciacorta, which is reminiscent of Francia, of France. Well, it's got nothing to do with that because it's from the Latin France or Franche curtes, monastic boroughs, which were exempted from paying taxes. So the free boroughs. And there's a long history of winemaking there. It has been recorded since the Middle Ages, but despite the fact that my friends in Franciacorta are kind of, let's say, coating history with legitimate findings, talking about sparkling wines being made during the Renaissance, etc. The more recent reality is that until the 1950s, most of the production was red wines, mostly for local consumption, until the early 1960s, when a group of entrepreneurs, especially one who invented his, as they called them at the time, méthode champenoise. And of course, now that word champenois cannot be used unless we're talking about champagne, quite legitimately. And the Franciacorta DOCG is now the largest PDO, protected designation of origin, in Italy for traditional method sparkling wines. And it's not huge. It's about just over 3,000 hectares under vine. and wines must be made with Pinot Noir up to 100%. So they could be blended noir. They can be made entirely with Chardonnay or with the classic blend of Pinot Noir Chardonnay in any proportion between these two varieties. Pinot Blanc is also permitted, but with a limit of no more than 50%. So while Chardonnay can be 100%, you can never have Pinot Blanc 100%, and mostly Pinot Blanc is really a minority grape. Very interesting, and this has a lot to do with dealing with climate change. Few years ago, in 2017, the rules authorized on an experimental basis the planting of an ancient local variety, which had been just about completely abandoned, called Herba Mate, which is a variety that gives a very high acidity and low sugar. So ideal to keep the freshness of the wines with rising temperatures as we are witnessing. And this warm temperatures are the biggest challenge that producers in Franciacorta are facing, because although they do have cooling breezes from the lake, which is at the north, and from the mountains, sometimes it's quite warm, and as a result, typically the harvest is in August, and so with all the challenges that can bring. Of course, as an experimental grape, Herba Mate is permitted only up to 10% for the moment, but it is expected that once people see what it does, how it behaves with the second fermentation and everything, it may increase. And it's also an interesting development to make the model of Franciacorta more local, because obviously everybody all over the world make traditional method sparkling wines with Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. And so having something that is uniquely local could be a very interesting development. It's made with traditional method only, which in Franciacorta, they insist on calling it Metodo Franciacorta, Franciacorta method, but of course it is the traditional method with quite long minimum aging on the lees. Basic Franciacorta Brut is 18 months minimum. Franciacorta Rose, which is made obviously with blending the Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, is 24 months. Franciacorta Satin, which I'll tell you in a second what it means, is again 24 months. Vintage, so this is for the non-vintages. For vintage, across all the types, Rosé, Brut, Satin is a minimum of 30 months. And for the Riserva, we're going up to 60 months. So with a lot of this bready and pastry character from the yeast autolysis. Now, what's Satin? Satin was named so to evoke silk. It's a Blanc de Blanc. Satin must be Blanc de Blanc. So Chardonnay, which ideally is 100%, or in any case, the majority grape, minimum 50%. There can be Pinot Blanc with capped at maximum 50%. And the difference of Satin is that the maximum pressure inside the bottle is less than standard traditional method. Most traditional method sparkling wines, including Franciacorta, but including Champagne and others, have a pressure between 5 and 6 atmospheres. For Satin, it is kept about 1 atmosphere lower, so the maximum is 5 atmospheres, and so it has more delicate bubbles, which make it, in my personal opinion, particularly food friendly, and it must be made only in the Brut version. And now I'm going to taste one Satin. And how many of you have a Satin to taste? Let's see. While I have this wine, and let me get out of this screen share. Okay. So again, reasonable proportion, and those of you who don't might look for one later. So nice, lovely pale gold color. Again, very nice intensity of aromas on the nose, with as you would expect, a lot of the bready aromas, toast, also ginger, but nice ripe stone fruit, peach, and red apple, wet stones, quite minerally, and some dried herbs like thyme, that kind of thing. So very interesting, developing kind of aroma. And on the palate, lovely, dry, very elegant. This is not an SAT term, but it's the first thing that comes to mind, with nice fresh acidity, not particularly high, like medium plus, very creamy mousse, and with, again, long finish with this flavors that go into the nutty and fresh citrus. So great food wine. It's one of my go-to wines for eggs, fried eggs, and this great tasting, but any kind of seafood, a quiche, prawns, oysters, of course, and whatever you would like to taste with it. All right, we're getting near the time limit. Let me see if there are some questions that I should be answering. Right, Adam, what's the difference in the production method between Lambrusco that makes Lambrusco lightly sparkling? To put it in a nutshell, very simply, the lower amount of sugar that's put in for the second fermentation, and so it keeps the pressure down. There is less of a second fermentation, and so less pressure. On blind tasting, what would be the differentiator for you between Champagne and Franciacorta? The acidity. That's the first one. I would normally expect very high acidity in Champagne and a more delicate creaminess in Franciacorta. and in tasting Franciacorta, does it have the flavor of peach as the only difference between other traditional methods? Well, peaches tend to be quite big in Franciacorta, but then of course in every traditional method, a lot of it depends really on the winemaker. Let me just share my screen a second. I see Verity, who is reminding me that the time is up, but I just need to point you in a couple of directions. Now, of course, we mentioned Italian sparkling wine is huge. It's pushing to 1 billion bottles. So you have no problem finding Italian sparkling wines anywhere. But what I want to stress this, of course, Prosecco, the whole Prosecco system between the DOC and the 2 DOCGs is over 80%, plus Asti, which is about 9%, Franciacorta and Trento, and all the rest is only 5%. But that 5% on the huge numbers of Italian sparkling wines means 40 million bottles. And in those 40 million bottles, you have a universe. You have sparkling everything, sparkling Soave, sparkling Verdicchio, sparkling Nebbiolo. You know, Nebbiolo, the Barolo grape, there are some lovely sparkling Nebbiolos there. So my message to you this evening is, you know, kind of, if you like, make a little effort, go beyond the palette of cut price Prosecco in your local discount store, and you can have some very interesting surprises with Italian sparkling wines, which are getting drier. So traditionally, a lot of Italian sparkling wines were in the upper echelons of the sweetness, dry and extra dry and sweet, and increasingly they're going down to Brut, Extra Brut, and Nature, and even Asti. The sweet sparkling wine par excellence is now made in very interesting dry and also Brut and Extra Brut versions. And if you happen to find some of those, they can be quite interesting. All right. So before they kick me out of the connection, I will declare myself finished. Thank you all very much for being with us, for the patience and following my ramblings. And the last poll I would like to go before we sign off. The wines I tasted certainly lived up to my expectations, but more importantly, did this webinar live up to your expectations?
Great, thank you, Flavio, and thank you everyone for joining us live. If you registered, you'll receive a recording of the webinar via email. And yeah, if you're watching on the YouTube channel, again, give us a like. If you would like to learn more about WSET qualifications, you can head over to our website, which is www.wsetglobal.com, and you can find the Where to Study tool there as well. So yeah, thank you.
And thank you everybody again for your appreciation. See you some other time, hopefully. Bye.
Bye.